Well, we haven't been doing gun control topics, plural, lately, but we're going to do one now. So I have a question. I've always asked this question. What constitutes a high-capacity magazine, and what determines a mass shooting? The answer seems to be whatever gets us closest to gun control. Now, there's an old line that we hear from the left that if you exercise your right to keep and bear arms, you're more likely to get killed with your own gun. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I've been in the talk radio game since 2002. I have never seen a news story where a homeowner was killed with their own gun. Let me just read to you something from Real Clear Investigations. Headline, How the FBI Undercounts Armed Citizen Responders to Mass Killers and Media Play Along. Quote, the FBI defines active shooter incidents as those in which an individual actively engages in killing or attempted to kill people in a populated public area, but does not include those it deems related to other criminal activity, such as robbery or fighting over drug turf. The Bureau reports that only 11 of the 252 active shooter incidents it identified for the period 2014 to 2021 were stopped by an armed citizen. An analysis by my organization, that's by our next guest, identified a total of 261 active shooter incidents during that time period and found that 41 of them were stopped by an armed citizen. That is, the FBI reported that 4.4% of active shooter incidents were thwarted by armed citizens, while the CPRC found 14.6. Although collecting such data is fraught with challenges, some see a pattern of distortion in the FBI numbers because the errors almost exclusively go one way, minimizing the life-saving actions of armed citizens. My next guest is the author of Gun Control Myths, How Politicians, the Media, and the Media Botched Studies Have Twisted the Facts on Gun Control, John Lott, Jr., author of the piece. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Great to talk to you again, Andrew.
All right, so simple question. Is this the FBI just messing up, or is this being done on purpose?
Well, I was working in the Department of Justice up until January last year. I told them that they were missing lots of cases. In fact, I've told them that a few times over the years. And I even have in writing that they acknowledge that they've missed cases. But the problem is they never go back and fix their report. And they continue to put it out. And the media also doesn't seem to care. When the Associated Press ran their story a few weeks ago about how rare it was that civilians use guns to stop these attacks, I sent the AP reporter my report from the Department of Justice that I did, as well as a long list with links so that they could go and check. And their response was, well, we're just accurately reporting what the report says. They didn't care whether or not they got it, the data there was right or wrong, and they didn't correct it.
Do you think it's because there's an interest in I mean, that's part of what gun control is, right? They don't want citizens to believe they can be active participants in stopping crime. I mean, and one of the points you make in the piece is they worry about, like, well, having more people with guns is going to put the public greater at risk. But so far from any one of these incidents, your data shows that the public has never been actually at added risk.
I mean, you look at the cases I have. First of all, I don't look at just active shooting cases. I have a much narrower set of cases, only incidents where police have said that multiple people would have been killed if it hadn't been for the presence of the person legally carrying a gun. And what I find is that, you say, well, maybe they'll shoot a bystander by accident. There's not one single case that I've been able to find where the person legally carrying a gun who stopped these attacks accidentally shot a bystander. Is it possible that could happen? Yeah. But at least have them point to an example where something like that's happened if they're going to make really serious arguments about it.
I hate to say this because I have friends who are NYPD, but you know how many times the New York City Police Department has shot bystanders here in New York City? It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, well, look, police have kind of different training than civilians have in terms of using guns defensively, and we could go into that. I mean, they put a lot more bullets down range with the hope that one of them are going to hit. The civilians are much more likely to be legally liable. I think they're more cautious in shooting many bullets that are there. And But look, the bottom line is what it is, and that is they cannot point to one single case where somebody who stopped one of these mass public shootings accidentally shot the wrong person.
But there's obviously a belief that if we saw more incidents where lives were saved by the good guy with a gun, the media, the Democrats are in complete denial of the good guy with a gun dynamic, and then they add on, well, if you keep a gun in the home, you're more likely to be killed with your own gun. Do you know of any statistic to back that up?
Look, I mean, there's a claim by some really poorly done research that's been done in the past, and I've gone through and shown how essentially how they've counted these cases has really created a lot of misleading information that are there, and we could go into it. But look, you can go and look at the numbers that are there, and the only thing that's rare is media coverage of these cases where civilians use guns to go and save lives. You have something like the Indianapolis case a few weeks ago where this young 22-year-old stepped in and stopped what clearly would have been a mass public shooting. The murderer there still had something like 125 rounds with him when he was stopped. And immediately the media went out and started saying how rare those types of instances were. As I say, I can give you many dozens of cases in just recent years where police have said that it would have been a mass public shooting if it wasn't for the civilian that was there. And some of them are very dramatic, and yet they don't get national news coverage. I'll give you a couple quick examples.
But wait, there's one point to be made there. There's no detriment to public safety. Like you said, not a single incident involves a defensive shooter shooting a bystander or mistakenly shooting the wrong person or missing the target. So even if the person is carrying a gun and doesn't engage the shooter, there's been the bottom line is there's been no loss of life or public safety because of the armed citizen, the legally armed citizen in public. As a matter of fact, it's only ever served as a positive.
Well, look, one thing that's very clear for anybody who's looked at the data is how incredibly law-abiding concealed carry permit holders are. They're convicted of any firearms-related violation, even very trivial ones, at about 1/12 the rate that police are convicted of firearms-related violations. The police are convicted at about 1/20th the rate of the general population. I mean, it's really hard to find almost any group that's as law-abiding as these individuals are that go through and get their concealed carry permit.
Yeah, because, I mean, like you said, the individual civilian law-abiding gun owner is held to an extremely high standard. And when you talk about incidental, you can get in trouble for brandishing a gun, right? If you think that having a gun lets you, stop an argument or end a sentence or deal with a traffic, issue, road rage, you get caught pulling your gun on someone brandishing, you could lose that gun in some states.
Right. You mentioned the 14% number, 14.6% number. Even that's misleading, not only because we don't include a lot of cases that the FBI includes, but also the fact that you're including cases where the attack occurred in a gun-free zone. The very fact that these individuals are law-abiding means that when you have certain areas that they're banned from having guns, they don't take guns in there. So you can't expect them to go and stop those types of attacks. If you're looking at instances where civilians had stopped what otherwise would have been a mass public shooting in cases where they're allowed to stop them, you're talking about 40% or so of these mass public shootings were stopped when they occurred in places where civilians were allowed to carry guns.
I've always been of the belief, and I'm saying this in poor attempt at sarcasm, that if somebody's a homicidal maniac, when they get to the mall and it says gun-free zone, they're going to be like, you know what, I was going to kill a bunch of people, but it says gun-free zone. I don't want to break the rules. I got to leave it there, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, yeah, they say that time after time, the mass public shooters admit they go to these places where guns are banned precisely because they know their victims will be disarmed. I got to leave it there.
I got to leave it there. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about whether or not we're going to see the footage of the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago.